Hey guys, it's time for our live at 5, so I'm a little early, like a couple minutes. So I'm just going to discuss a few questions that people had for me that either can't make it to the live for whatever reason or are sleeping right now. So while I wait for you guys to join and bring your questions, I'll answer these. So one of the questions was omega-3s. People have heard me talk about the contrary belief that omega-3s are actually not that great for you. And people are like, wait, does that mean that, I should stay away from eating like fatty fish like salmon? And my answer to that question is, eat it when you crave it, but I wouldn't excessively go overboard. All these people, salmon pushers, fatty fish pushers, are telling you that salmon's so anti-inflammatory because it's so rich in these omega-3s. But you guys, remember that omega-3s are still polyunsaturated fats, and all prostaglandins or inflammatory compounds are made from polyunsaturated fats, including omega-3s. The only reason why omega-3s have been touted as anti-inflammatory is because they do have a mechanism that kind of can block prostaglandin production a little bit, but prostaglandins are still made out of polyunsaturated fats that come from even omega-3s. And so, I would definitely not supplement with it. And then in addition, it's very difficult to find fish oil supplements that have not gone rancid. Because fish oil is so unstable, it's one of those things where you can't really transport it. It's so unstable and so sensitive to light and heat that by the time it gets to you, it's already gone rancid, it's already oxidized, and it's going to come in and kind of damage your cells a lot more. And so when it comes to eating fatty fish, you just have to remember that it is metabolically suppressing. So if you're pounding salmon all the time and you're having a very difficult time losing weight, it is metabolically suppressing. Remember that, bears stock up on salmon before they go into hibernation, which is a suppressed metabolic state. And so if you're finding that fatty fish is kind of keeping you from your goals, or you've been really struggling with your health and you're like, I'm eating so anti-inflammatory, what's going on? It could be too much fatty fish. And then when it comes to so I had another question. I know you guys are having questions coming in. I'm just answering the ones that have been asked in my DMs, just 3, and then I'll get to yours. But somebody asked about PMDD and said, the week leading up to my period is just like I'm a completely different person. I have acne, I'm depressed, I have anxiety, what's going on? Well, remember, you guys, that most of the time in PMDD, women are low in progesterone. And remember, progesterone is that really good anti-inflammatory, feel-good, happy hormone. But progesterone is also anti-inflammatory, and it also blocks the effects of estrogen. And so a lot of women with PMDD have this double whammy that they're not detoxifying estrogens well. Whether it's because their gut's not really that healthy or their liver is kind of overloaded. And so they're having a problem with estrogen detox on top of not making enough progesterone. And so we have these two things going on with PMDD. And so what I recommend is if you're having a hard time that week before your cycle is you feel like a completely different person, you've got to start focusing on the liver a week before that. So usually before ovulation, I recommend you really got to start working on the liver, and you got to start working on detoxification. And I have a free liver detox guide on my website that goes through some really great pointers on how to detoxify and open up your detoxification pathways, because your body's always detoxing. It's not like you're going to detox your body, but your body can be more efficient at detoxifying. So you got to do that, and then you got to make sure you're eating enough all cycle long. A lot of times remember that depression is not a disease, it's a state of being. And so many women that come to me don't even realize that their depression is completely just due to them under-eating and under-nourishing themselves. They're eating so little, their body is just kind of in this depressed state, and the minute they start to eat more, they start to see that their bodies are kind of waking up. They feel fully alive. Think of it as a car that's been running on just fumes for a while, and it'll feel a lot different when you start to actually run on full fuel. So that is kind of my recommendations for PMDD. And then one more question, and then I'll get to your guys' questions. But I had someone ask about weights and adrenal fatigue, or she put quotes around adrenal fatigue because she knows I talk about how adrenal fatigue doesn't exist. It's much more complicated than that. Your adrenal glands don't just fatigue. It's more of a cellular issue or thyroid issue. It has a lot to do with a multitude of hormones, not just the adrenals, and they definitely don't fatigue. And so she was asking, when you're in this really hyper hypometabolic state, which is what I call it. Your hypometabolic means slow metabolism, suppressed metabolism, hypometabolic. When you're in this stress-driven or hypometabolic state, can you lift weights? And my answer to that is yes, but you have to be careful. A lot of women are like, it's all or nothing, man. Like, if I can lift weights, I'm gonna lift weights every day for an hour. And I'm like, yeah, probably not. But usually women have a tolerance, and it is a good thing to continue to exercise, and muscle mass is so important for healing your metabolism and really having optimal function. And so there's gonna be a fine line. And the best way that you can find out if you're tolerating exercise well is taking your temperature and your pulse after exercise. If you see that your exercise is cooling you down, that shows a suppressed metabolism. But if you see your exercise is warming you up, that shows that you're probably seeing your metabolic rate increase after exercise. And so if you see yourself regularly cooling down, that shows that that exercise was actually suppressing thyroid function. You want to play around with the intensity and the duration of your exercise. You might need to do like less intensity or shorter workouts, or you might need to do a different type of workout, or you might need to take more rest in between sets. So I think it's worth experimenting with, but you're gonna probably find you really can tolerate very little, and a little goes a long way. Okay, I'm gonna get to you guys' questions, sorry. Okay, I got tips for panic attacks when they come on. It feels like a heart attack. Yes, so when you're having a panic attack or you have really bad anxiety, your body usually just needs some fuel. It really needs anxiety almost always happens for a reason, and so do panic attacks. A lot of times it has a lot to do with nutrient deficiencies, specifically sugar. I see it a lot in my keto or low carb ladies, or women that don't really know they're low carb, but they are low carb. They get really bad anxiety or panic attacks. Or we see, like, sometimes panic attacks can be brought on just by a vitamin B1 deficiency. So it's very important to get vitamin B1 and vitamin B2 when you're struggling with panic attacks to see if they're the cause of that. Like, it's just a vitamin B1 or B2 deficiency. But then when anxiety attacks or panic attacks come on, getting some salt and sugar into your body very quickly can be very, very calming. I do something called, it's like the adrenal creamsicle, or you could call it like an orange creamsicle, but it has 6 ounces of fresh squeezed orange juice, no pulp because you don't want to irritate your gut. You want some quick, easy to absorb sugars. But then you want to add some salt to that as well. Sea salt or Himalayan pink salt, because that's going to cool the stress response. And then you want to add some fat, and I do that in the form of 2 tablespoons of heavy cream, or you can do like 1 cup of raw whole milk or grass-fed whole milk. And then you want to do a little bit of protein, so 2 tablespoons of collagen, grass-fed collagen. And what this is going to do, it's going to calm you. Your body, you're going to feel your calm come over you. And then another thing to do in panic attacks is a lot of us don't realize that when we are having an anxiety attack or a panic attack, we're tightening the diaphragm. We're starting to get really anxious, and so we're tightening our muscles. We need to relax. And how do you get everything to relax? A lot of women are like, I can't relax. Well, you have to mind-body connection that, and you have to breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. You need to take really deep belly breaths and feel that diaphragm moving air in and out, because it's very difficult to be stressed when you're focused on your breath. And so those are my 2 tips work for when panic attacks come on. The adrenal creamsicle or the calming creamsicle, and then deep breathing. And that usually can kind of like, okay, I'm okay. And then, the old breathing into a paper bag trick really does work. It's increasing your CO2 levels and lowering stress on your cells. So don't underestimate the power of breathing into a paper bag. Any updates on Fully Nourished? Yes, guys, I'm working on it. It's coming along. It's getting there. I just am really hesitant to, I don't want to announce a date because it stresses me out, and then because I feel like, oh gosh, now I gotta do this. And it also is going to make you wait. So it's coming along. I've been working on it all day today. I worked on it a lot yesterday. It's going to be a couple weeks, just kind of hang in there. It's on the brink. So when I'm about 2 weeks out, I'm going to announce it, and I'm going to say, hey guys, Fully Nourished is going to be out in about a week or 2. Just letting you know, the minute the doors open, you will be aware. You're going to know that Fully Nourished is out, and the doors are going to stay open for that $100 off for 2 weeks. So I will be extending that to you guys for 2 weeks, just to say thank you for waiting. I really appreciate it. And then it's going to go back up to full price, which is going to be $287. So It'll be $187 for 2 weeks. I promise it will not go by without your knowledge. And I will be opening it up for a Q&A as well, for just people that are interested in Fully Nourished. So I'll be doing 2 separate Q&As, so that people can submit their questions and ask about, any questions that you want answered about Fully Nourished. I will answer them, because my goal's not like, oh, you need to buy my program. I need this to be the right fit for you. I don't want it to you to just buy it and not be the right fit. I want you to be 100% sure that this is the right fit for you. And so I want, you to have the opportunity to ask as many questions as you need, get as much information as you need before you feel comfortable pulling that trigger. Because I think sometimes people can feel forced into a sale or a buy, or they can kind of feel like, I don't know if it's right for me, but I need to buy it now. So I want you guys to be really confident, and I want you guys to not feel stressed about that situation. I want you guys to know, like, Fully Nourished is the right thing for me. So keep an eye out for it. It's like a couple weeks out, so just hang in there. I'm working so hard on it. Like, all my free time is going to that. I'm staying up super late some nights. Like, that's kind of why I've been MIA on Instagram. I've been exhausted, you guys. Like, I've been really, like, putting my sleep on the back burner and putting my health on the back burner. Not like too much to where it's like I'm being a hypocrite, but really like making sure that any ounce of free time I could spend, I'm spending it on that for you, because I'm so excited to get it out to you. Okay, I have a question. Iodine supplementation for Hashimoto's, yes or no? So confused. Never take iodine, ever, unless you get your iodine levels tested. Ever. Ever. I should emphasize ever. Because iodine is one of those things that, you do need, but at the same time, too much is almost more harmful than not enough. And so a lot of women are doing a lot of damage taking iodine when they are, when it's not applicable. And so it's really important to get tested. And then when it comes to iodine supplementation, I really try to recommend you get it from food as much as possible. Like, there are situations where it's applicable. Like, if you have really bad fibrocystic breasts, or you have really bad estrogen issues, like, sometimes practitioners know when to utilize it. But I think that it can do a lot more harm than good. And so it's best to focus on iodine-rich foods if you're trying to get iodine levels up. Or get iodine-rich foods in regularly, like by having just some white fish or shellfish once or twice a week. Making sure, you can add, really, you guys, this is why I like dairy as well. Dairy is actually pretty rich in iodine. Animal foods are pretty rich in iodine, but dairy specifically. And then if you can't get it from your food, that's when you should consider supplementation. But yeah, it's not like one of the supplements I would recommend for all women. It's not a supplement that I think people should be concerned about unless they're really not eating a nutrient-dense diet. But I think it really should be the goal of someone to just try to get it in their diet regularly, a couple times a week. I have like a big zit on my forehead too, so just don't mind me. It's like the week before my period, and I always get like one zit on my forehead. My body's like, F you, Someone said to me recently, we are the only mammals that consume another mammal's milk past infancy. It's not natural. In regards to dairy, what would your response be to this? I'd be like, we're not mammals, we're human beings. So, yeah, not applicable. That is like a vegan saying going around, and it's like, well, okay, like, we're not mammals necessarily. We're different than mammals. Last time I checked, I don't have the digestive system of a cow. I don't have the digestive system of an ostrich. I don't have the digestive system of any other mammal on the planet except for myself. And humans are omnivores, period. And humans have always drank milk throughout the centuries. Like, the idea that, people were like pressing their almonds for juice, and they're like, let's go collect almonds for 24 hours and then press them into a juice and call it almond milk. Like, no one's ever done that in history except for us. And so it's just like, you gotta look at it for what it is. Humans have been consuming dairy for thousands of years. It's a very nutrient-dense food. That's why you crave it. It's very anti-stress. It's a dopamine encourager. So it like makes you feel really good, right? And that's like, a lot of people are like, yeah, it's like opium. And I'm like, no, it's like dairy. Like, it just is a dopamine promoter. It makes you feel good. And so like, I just think that, People do not understand that if a food does not work for them, a traditional food that their great-grandmother, great-great-grandmother, great-great-great-grandmother, great-great-great-great-grandmother drank that they can't tolerate, there's a problem in the body. It's not a dairy problem. Obviously, I'm not pushing you guys to go drink conventional dairy with a bunch of crappy additives. You need to make sure that the cow ate what it was supposed to eat. Grass. The cow was treated how it was supposed to be treated. Well, and with kindness, and with care, and with consciousness. And you want to make sure that the cow lived as close to nature as possible, got sun, fresh air, so yes, buy high quality dairy. If you can't tolerate dairy, take it as a sign in your body saying like, hey, there's an issue going on. Not like, oh, dairy must be the culprit. Let me go chug some nut juice. You know what I mean? So, there are a lot of weird health and wellness like sayings and things going around, and I just think it's baloney. Which water filter would you recommend? I personally have an Aquasana reverse osmosis filter installed under the sink, but I know that's not an option for everyone because some people rent or some people don't have, access to someone that might install it. It's very simple to install. You could do it yourself. It doesn't require like a handyman or anything like that. But for a renter, I usually just recommend a good gravity filter. The Berkey with an added fluoride filter usually tends to be the most popular, but there are other gravity filters on the market that are comparable to the Berkey. So the Berkey is like the most expensive, but that doesn't mean it's the best. So you do want to make sure that your water filter is going to filter chlorine, fluoride, contaminants from pharmaceuticals, heavy metals, and then any type of pathogens, parasites, things like that. And that's what you're kind of looking for. And then anything else is an added bonus. But if like a gravity filter or a reverse osmosis system is a little bit out of your budget, they're usually going to run you anywhere from like $150 to $350. I know it's an investment, but once it's done, and then you just have to replace the filter every so often. If that's kind of just out of your budget right now and you're like, maybe one day, I have found for my clients that are on a lower budget, the Aqua Gear pitcher. Now, it's not the same thing as a Brita. A Brita just is filtering for taste, but the Aqua Gear is similar to a Brita and it's just a pitcher filter. But it does filter chlorine and fluoride and more of the contaminants. And it's at a little lower cost. It's still pricey for a pitcher, $70, but it's cheaper than if you were going to pull the trigger on a bigger filter. So those are kind of my three options. How do you feel about Coseva TRS? I've never heard of that. I don't really know what you're referring to. Is wearing a thong a bad idea? I don't necessarily think so. You just want to make sure that you're keeping your fabrics natural. So like cotton is breathable, things like that. And your underwear should never be tight, meaning it should never leave a line. And that's true for your bra as well. I think that bras are a bigger issue than actually underwear. I think that you should kind of do what you want with your underwear, what makes you feel good. But you do want to make sure you stick to more natural fabrics and then organic if you can swing it. But I know like sometimes it gets a little bit too much when you're like, okay, I have to pay like $6 for organic underwear. So just, do the best you can. But you want to stick to natural fabrics and not do a lot of like synthetics and laces and things like that because it's just harsh. But when it comes to bras, that is something you guys need to be concerned with for sure. Your bras should never be tight. They should never ever leave a mark, ever because that means it's blocking lymphatic drainage. Remember, you have some lymph nodes that kind of go underneath your breast and in your armpit, and they are responsible, your lymph system and your lymph nodes absorb everything from your skin and carry it to be dumped into the bloodstream and then to be detoxified by the liver. That stuff is not moving, or it cannot be sweated out. Like when you use antiperspirants or you use a very, very restrictive bra, what can happen is you can get a lot of stagnation occurring in those lymph nodes, and you'll have problem with drainage, and you'll start having heavy metals stick around in there, toxins, chemicals stick around in there, and you don't want that stuff stagnant. You want it moving. And so that's why we want to make sure we're allowing our armpits to sweat, and then we're also, allowing our bodies to move. I don't really recommend underwire bras just because they do act as kind of like an antenna to Wi-Fi, EMF signals, that kind of thing, and you're just drawing radiation towards your boobs. Not a great idea. So, look for something that's a plastic under, like, I guess it's not a wire, but like a plastic underwire, or just, more of a sports like bra or bralette. And that's, to me, more important to be concerned about than your underwear, even though it's important to know what is near your vagina. Missed cycles, switched from Vitex to black cohosh, also on Zoloft and Wellbutrin for my PTSD from a family tragedy. Any suggestions? Yeah, I think that black cohosh can be applicable in some people's lives, but it is an estrogen promoter. So usually estrogen is not the problem. Ovulation is the problem, and Vitex does help with ovulation. It has that pituitary signaler, or it kind of works with the pituitary gland. So in my opinion, Vitex is my favorite all the way over black cohosh. But it could be the change, it's just kind of your body's kind of freaking out. So I wouldn't worry necessarily, but you should try to see if you can do it without supplements too, just a suggestion or an idea, and see maybe if your cycle will regulate now, because usually Vitex should take about 4 to 6 months to kick in. And once you've taken it consistently for 4 to 6 months and got a regular cycle on Vitex, you can sometimes go off and you'll continue with your regular cycle. So it doesn't need to be taken long term. Actually, it can become less effective long term and really shouldn't be taken over. In my opinion, I go on more of the safe side and say 7 to 9 months. Anything longer than that, it really does need a break from it. Do you still recommend coffee enemas for liver detoxification? Absolutely. I think they are so incredible. They're one of the most incredible things to support a woman's overall well-being, and it can be really helpful for gut health, really helpful if you're really toxic and you've been chronically constipated for a long time, or you just have really poor liver and gallbladder flow. It is important to be very, very, have common sense when you do them, and to go really slowly at first. Maybe start with a lower volume or lower amounts of coffee, or both, and then work your way up, just so you can kind of experiment and see, because some people are really toxic and they do have a bigger toxic burden, and so when they do a coffee enema full force the first time, they feel really sick afterwards. So it can be really good to kind of work up and kind of just see how your body reacts. It's always, when it comes to supplements, food changes, diet changes, anything, it's always better to be safe than sorry. It's always better to be conservative and work up to something and start really small and then work your way up, than to just be I'm starting my plan on Monday and then doing 8 coffee enemas in a row and all your supplements and all your diet changes all at once. I know we're kind of taught that, but at the end of the day, it's really about what you do consistently. And so I think that coffee enemas are great. I still do them pretty regularly, and I know a lot of my clients really like them as well. When is the best time to check my thyroid, and what should I ask my doctor to test? You should always ask your doctor to test at least TSH, T3, and T4. But it's best to also get your antibodies tested, your free T4, your free T3, and then your reverse T3 as well. So the more information, the better, but sometimes doctors will really just fight you on the first 3 I talked about, the free TSH, the T3, and the T4. So if you're having an utter fight to get even those, you're probably not going to get the other ones. So that's why I say I prioritize those 3, and then anything in addition you can get is great. But the best time to check your thyroid is, it kind of depends. I think if your lowest is either going to be in the morning, but some people will have lower thyroid function in the early afternoon, so it just kind of depends. This is why I always recommend using temperatures and pulses to track your thyroid function and your metabolic function, because your heat production is going to show you directly how your thyroid is functioning. But it's kind of one of those things where if you don't really know when your thyroid's under functioning, you just should go either in the morning or the early afternoon, but really any time is fine. Do you know how high levels of excess iron can affect hormones? I have a genetic iron overload mutation disorder, which was undiagnosed for a long time. Yeah, it could definitely affect your hormones for sure. It's very stressful on the body. It's almost it can be almost, I don't want to say it can be considered heavy metal toxicity, but it can definitely be considered an organic mineral toxicity. So it's definitely important to really for a while, especially if you're really overloaded right now, to just kind of reduce the amount of iron rich foods you get and really focus on antagonists of iron. And there should be a lot of information about that. You can type in iron antagonists. I'm taking brown seaweed as an iodine supplement. Should I be taking selenium with it? Yeah, I don't think that iodine should ever be supplemented without selenium. You know, they kind of work in relation to each other, and taking iodine without selenium can be really like not great for the thyroid. I also don't think like high doses of iodine are a good idea like ever. But some people do feel okay on them, so it's kind of like whatever you feel best. You always want to trust your gut on that. And then just be careful with like seaweed based and kelp based iodines, because they can be really rich in certain heavy metals. Starting to become very depressed about weight I've gained after stopping keto. I'm going crazy with not cutting calories and over exercise. I want to heal, but the weight is driving me crazy. Well, what you have to understand is, you know, you've gotten into such a hypometabolic state that cutting calories and over exercising is first of all going to make it worse. And second of all, probably not going to help you lose weight at all. And so it's going to be like this constant, you really got to keep your eye on the prize and see that if you do that, it's going to be a constant yo-yo. What's gotten you to this place in the first place? That mentality. The mentality that you're having right now is what got you here. And so, you know, if you want to be here again, keep doing what you're doing. You know, you remember that whole saying that says like insanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results. That is what I try to remind women when they're in this really constant yo-yo idea of if you want to lose weight, you need to just restrict and over exercise. You're just suppressing your metabolism further. You're just getting deeper into the hole. And so what has had to happen, and remember, you know, it's not necessarily, you know, I think a lot of us blame ourselves, right? We're really hard on ourselves. It's like, it's all my fault. Like, I should have done this. And it's like, at the end of the day, learn your lesson. Learn your lesson and move on. You know, you're never going to do this again where you don't listen to your body when your body's telling you to do something very different. If, you know, your body spoke to you in signs and symptoms for so long and it was your job to tune into them and you didn't, and so look at what happened. And so now learn your lesson and don't do it again. You know what I mean? Or you're going to just be right back before, and it's just going to be worse. It's going to be just harder to get out of that hole. So I recommend starting very, very slow. Start taking your temperatures and pulses immediately. Start taking them right when you wake up, 40 minutes after you eat breakfast, and then, you know, 1 to 3 p.m. See how your metabolism is functioning before your very eyes, and that's where you need to start. Anything that's going to increase that heat is going to show you, okay, now that's actually helping my metabolic function. And I will be honest, I'm always real with you guys. Sometimes getting yourself out of the keto hole, especially after you've been low carb for too long before keto, like you just went lower and lower and lower carb until you got to a place where you were like in a keto area of carbohydrates, just makes like you're already suppressed, and then you're making it worse over time. And so it can take time to get out of, but there's only one way out of it, and it's the slow way. Weight loss only happens one way, slow. If you're looking for fast weight loss, you're looking for a magical unicorn that doesn't exist. I'm sorry. And you're like, wait, what about that person that lost all that weight? And I'm like, just give it some time. Hopefully they don't gain it back. And so you just gotta hang in there and gotta focus on your metabolic function. But where I would start is with your temperatures and pulses, because even if you have that like temptation to go over exercise and under eat, you're gonna be taking your temperatures and pulses and see how those things lower everything and make you colder. And you're gonna be like, oh wow, look at how much my metabolism is suppressed when I under eat and over exercise. Hi Jess. Hi Melina. Hi Jess, I started spotting on day 23 of my cycle, have 36-day cycles, and didn't stop until day 28. Can I attribute this to starting seed cycling? You can. Seed cycling in certain cases can definitely cause spotting, and not always in a good way either. So it's kind of like something that where you just kind of have to try it and pay attention to it, and just kind of see what happens. But some women don't actually see benefits with the addition of seed cycling. They actually see things get worse. So just be careful and keep an eye on things. And just, you know, you never know. Listen to your body though. But if you were ovulating regularly, just kind of keep an eye on ovulation. And then sometimes spotting can just be, you know, a freak thing. So, but if it becomes a common occurrence, then you kind of want to look deeper into that. What do you think about castor oil packs for detox? Is castor oil also a PUFA? I use castor oil for detox all the time, but the thing is with castor oil packs is you have to make sure that what's coming out of the gallbladder and the liver up here and being dumped into the small intestine makes it all the way out of the small intestine and then into the large intestine and out of the body, because all of that junk needs to get out. And so castor oil packs are no bueno when you are not pooping regularly or you're constipated. They can also be contraindicated in people with very severe liver and gallbladder disorders, and they're also not good if you have any implants in your body, including breast implants, anything. You can really extract, they really pull things out of the body, and it can extract anything out of the body, like implants. So, and that goes for like surgical implants or like cosmetic implants, so either one. So you just kind of got to be careful in those situations. And then it's also contraindicated if you're trying to get pregnant or you want to get pregnant. It can really cause uterine cramping and bleeding, which is why it's also contraindicated when you're menstruating or when you're bleeding. It can make you bleed harder and cramp harder. So I think they're great for detox. You just kind of have to be knowledgeable about them. And then you also need to make sure you're not constipated, or you're going to kind of cause things to become worse for a little while because you're like dumping things from the liver and gallbladder, but then they have nowhere to go except be absorbed. And then you can feel like junk. So that's why I think castor oil packs and coffee enemas are kind of like a match made in heaven. Doing a castor oil pack first means that the gallbladder and the liver are getting a little bit of a workout, and then the coffee enema is kind of getting things, starting to clear things out and kind of push it down the digestive system. So I really like them together. Your advice with bloating during my ovulation was so helpful, and this month was so much better. Now I'm about to get my cycle and the bloat just hit. Are there healthy ways to help that? Absolutely. So I'm so glad that worked. I can't remember what I exactly told you, but I'm sure it was like some milk thistle and turmeric and stuff like that. So when it comes to pre-period bloating, now the couple days before your cycle, it is normal to get a little bloated. But if you're getting bloated all luteal phase, or you're extremely bloated the first couple days before your period, then it could be inflammation, but it can also be low progesterone. Because remember, progesterone, when you make progesterone during ovulation, that also acts as a diuretic, and we want that diuretic effect. But then on another hand, a lot of women are low in potassium, which can cause excess bloating during the menstrual, like that first part of the menstrual cycle as well, or during your period. And so I recommend doing potassium to see if that helps. I like Trace Minerals Research Drops, just their potassium drops, and they have also some sodium in them and just like some trace minerals. That can be really helpful. Applying magnesium oil to your whole torso can be helpful. Soaking in an Epsom salt bath can be helpful, or just like sweating it out, and see if that kind of helps. Also, your digestion can kind of be a bit sluggish before your period, so sometimes taking digestive enzymes or doing digestive bitters or doing like a little apple cider vinegar tonic in the morning can be helpful, or some ginger tea throughout the day. Like, you're really trying to determine if it has to do with your digestive system or if it has to do with progesterone. If it has to do with progesterone, then it's probably not going to be better until you get your progesterone levels up. But if it has to do with the digestive system, doing like those really anti-inflammatory digestive helpers like apple cider vinegar, ginger, what else did I say? Warm water, that can be really, really helpful. And then also potassium if it's a potassium issue. And so those are usually the three main things I see for PMS bloating that's really, really bad, and actually during the menstrual, the first part of that menstrual cycle as well. Which is technically, like, I always get tripped up because like a lot of people will say, oh no, your period is your menstrual cycle. And I'm like, well, actually your whole 28-day cycle is your menstrual cycle. And that first week is, or the first couple weeks is the follicular phase, and the bleed kicks off that follicular phase. I cannot find grass-fed dairy in my area. Is conventional best to completely avoid in this case? I think that's really up to you. Like, try to look for organic if you can. If you can't find grass-fed or organic and it's just conventional, then what you would want to do is you'd want to look for something that has no additives and no gums added. You really want to look at the ingredients to conventional dairy, and then that's kind of up to you to decide if you can tolerate or not. It is best to get high-quality dairy just because the cows are not like, they're fed grass and they're fed what they're supposed to eat, whereas conventional dairy, it's a lot harder to control what your cow ate. It's hard to know what they were fed because there's really not a lot of regulations, but a lot of people do fine on conventional dairy. So it's kind of one of those things where you just have to experiment and decide for yourself. And I don't think there's a right or wrong in that. I think it's just more of what works for you. And I think a lot of us can worry like, oh my gosh, I'm like drinking some conventional dairy, like, oh my gosh. And I'm like, if it's working for you, who cares? Like, there's going to be a lot of people that judge you, but are they healthier than you? Like, you know, I have a lot of people that are just like health and wellness, like, you know, kale thumpers that are like dairy-free, gluten-free, vegan, you know, and they're like the sickest people I've ever met. And it's like, you know, it's just like the more restricted and the more judgmental you get, probably the less healthy you will be. So do foods that work for you that are nutrient dense. That was my long rant about that. Hi Jess, would progesterone cream help shrink ovarian cysts, or what else could I try to do that besides getting rid of excess estrogen? Thank you. Yeah, I mean, remember, the partially progesterone does help get rid of excess estrogen. So a lot of women do see huge benefits with progesterone, bioidentical progesterone prescription, or, you know, trying that for themselves. I think it's worth experimenting, in my opinion. If I had something like that, I would probably want to try just about anything. And so that I've heard be really helpful for ovarian cysts. I've also heard castor oil packs being really helpful for ovarian cysts. But I would do a lot more research on that, make sure that sounds right for you and you're ready to try it, and have read other people's ideas, because I don't have any personal experience with it, so I don't feel comfortable just saying like, go do it. I think you should really research that. But I've heard castor oil packs being actually quite effective on all types of cysts. And then progesterone supplementation also being very helpful in kind of getting that estrogen dominance down and helping with your overall well-being. Hi Jessica, any knowledge on epilepsy? Could you recommend someone, please? You know, it's kind of one of those things where you really do want to be in tune with your body and start to really pay attention to what brings seizures on for you. And then also, you know, taking your temperatures and pulses is really important. I don't really specialize in epilepsy. I've worked with a couple girls that have it, but they got it very irregularly. And I'm not really sure of anyone that I know personally for epilepsy, but you know, I'm going to write it down, because this is why I brought my notepad this time around, because sometimes I'll say something and I forget. And I will look into that for you, for sure. But yeah, that's definitely, I think I've seen a pattern with women that sometimes they can find that their pattern of epilepsy is brought on cyclically, like there's something going on hormonally a little bit, or they can like maybe track a pattern of it's like an exposure to somebody that really brings them a lot of stress that they weren't realizing, or they maybe weren't deep breathing. Like they're, you know, sometimes more seizures will come on when they can pinpoint what factors are causing it. But at the same time, like that's definitely not my specialty, and they weren't working with me specifically for that. Coconut oil as a lube when using a condom as birth control, yes or no? Definitely no. I would not trust those two together. And coconut oil, you guys, like, I don't think it's the best lube. Remember, it's like antibacterial and antifungal. And it's better than like, I guess it's better than like conventional lubes, but at the same time, like I don't think that it's probably the best. You know, a more of like a non-toxic water-soluble one would probably have less effect on the pH and the bacterial balance of your vagina. But that's kind of up to you. If you don't have any problems with it, it's not, you don't need to make a problem for it. But I don't think that combined with condoms would be like 100% effective. How do you treat candida? I know you don't believe sugar is the devil like most peeps, and neither do I, but I'm curious what your game plan is. Yeah, so you don't treat candida. Candida got there, why? Candida didn't just like decide one day like, I'm gonna overgrow, like, and your body was like, okay. That doesn't happen. Your body is a very tightly regulated organism, and it has mechanisms in place to keep pathogens from overgrowing. So you always, again, like I always say, what's that proper question, you guys? And this is for practitioners, and this is also for you self-healers. The question is never, how do you do anything? Why did it happen in the first place is the question. Why? And usually what's going on in somebody that has accumulated a lot of yeast or fungal overgrowth is that the digestive system has broken down. But why is the digestive system broken down? There's all these people talking about gut issues, and I'm like, gut issues, your gut is the only place where the outside world comes inside the body. You don't think your body's smart enough to know, like, this is a very stressful event and there has to be very important steps in place to protect the body from anything that could come inside? Of course, the body knows this, but stress and metabolic dysfunction can absolutely suppress this from happening. And it always starts with the hydrochloric acid and the digestive enzymes in the stomach. So this is why your mouth health and your stomach health is literally your whole gut health. And everyone always forgets this. They're always like, let's look at the gut and let's take some probiotics and let's do this and let's kill candida. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, stop, you know? We gotta lower stress on the body first, because usually that will just start to speed up digestive function, like, all by itself. You've got to get digestive enzymes producing. You can take some, but you also need to get your body making digestive enzymes. And how does your body do that? Well, you need proper thyroid function. You need enough minerals, specifically salt and potassium, calcium and magnesium. And then you also need to make sure that you're not in a stressed out survival state 24/7. You're deep breathing a lot, you're not tight, you're not tense, you're not like like an aggressive type person. You're eating while sitting down and relaxing. You're not like chomping, you know, like eating with no consciousness and like watching Netflix while you do it and scarfing things down without even thinking about it. You're chewing your food, you're mindfully consuming things, you're looking at your food, you're smelling your food, you're tasting your food. And that's kind of where I start. Then once we kind of get a better baseline, it's kind of like, okay, so sometimes fungal issues are really bad and you do need some kind of antifungal. So I still don't recommend starving, the idea of starving candida. You can't starve candida. Candida just gets really, really vicious and angry and can start to like grow into the bloodstream by actually ripping apart the cell walls of the gut. And so we want to keep it localized in the gut. We want it to stay there and we need it to be fed a little bit. So that's why you shouldn't really restrict too much sugar when you have candida. I mean, you can restrict it enough to like not feel symptoms, but you don't want to like completely starve it. And then, you know, that actually makes the problem worse, because when you're restricting carbohydrates and sugar, your metabolism will actually slow. And so like the thing that started the problem in the first place is now starting again. And then, you know, it kind of depends. Sometimes some antifungal herbs can be beneficial, like undecilinic acid, oregano. You can do, like, you need to take some kind of biofilm breaker, like biofibrin or proteolytic enzyme, something to break down the biofilms. Diatomaceous earth can also work well. So, you know, you have to break down the jelly-like structures surrounding candida before you actually kill candida. And then it kind of depends on how bad the infection is. That's why I really do like to run a gut test, because if someone has like a lot of candida, it's going to be a little bit more intense. You know, you're going to want to eat some garlic and some sulfur, things like that. Whereas if you just have a little of a yeast infection, usually just taking care of your metabolic function, your stomach acid, your digestive enzymes, your pancreatic enzymes, and your liver detoxification usually takes care of the problem. You know, once your body has what it needs, your immune system does the trick. Your body knows how to kill candida. Your body knows how to kill parasites, pathogens, things like that. People act like their body's like an idiot, and I'm like, no, your body knows how to do it. So our goal is to just give our body the tools and keep our body from being metabolically suppressed or immune suppressed, and actually give our body what it needs to fight that job itself. It's so much easier, guys, than like feeling like we have to take on that burden of healing our body. Like, okay, now I gotta like do my candida cleanse, I think, you know. It's just like, you know, let's get the body optimally functioning, which is why I'm coming out with Fully Nourished first, and I think it should be a prerequisite to any gut program that I do. And then if somebody truly is having a problem, you know, feeling okay and tolerating the foods in Fully Nourished and really seeing gut healing after 6 to 8 weeks, then you sometimes need to do a more targeted protocol. But candida usually takes care of itself for the most part, as long as you're focusing on the right things, getting digestive function back to optimal. What is the optimal basal body temperature to test thyroid function? So a basal body thermometer doesn't really matter as long as you can just stick it underneath your tongue and you're using the same one pretty consistently. That's all that matters. You want your temperature to be between 97.8 and 98.6 upon waking, and then you want it to raise over the course of the day in conjunction with what it was when you were waking. So, you know, if it was 97.8 when you woke up, it should continually raise throughout the day. But remember that temperatures can lie to you, and that's why I recommend testing your pulse as well, because sometimes people will have high temperatures and they'll be like, oh, I'm great, my metabolism is awesome, like my waking temperatures are great, but then their pulse rate is like 150, or not 150, but like 125 or 115, and their heart's rapidly beating. That shows that stress hormones are warming you up, baby, not your thyroid, not your metabolism. And so we need to make sure that our pulses are between like 75 to 90, so that we know that things are normal on the stress hormone level as well. So we want our temperatures optimal, but we also want our pulses optimal, which will give us a better idea of what's going on stress-wise. Is it safe to take potassium? How much per day? What iodine is okay? If cannot get organic cheese, should I go no cheese? Will you recommend supplement brands and fully nourished? I'm not actually a huge fan of supplements, you guys. I find that, and this is very contrary again, because a lot of people come to me on 10, 15, 20 supplements that they're like, this person told me to take this and this person told me to take this, and they're worse off than they've ever been. Because you have to understand that when you're baking a cake, there's very specific ingredients and specific amounts that need to be combined. And if you're starting to add all this supplemental flour or supplemental sugar to that cake, you have to start increasing all the other ingredients as well, or the cake won't turn out. And you need to think of the same thing as when you're supplementing. You're not going to be able to control what needs to be raised, because supplements always come to package together in nature. Vitamin A usually comes with vitamin K, and sometimes vitamin D and vitamin E, or we see like sometimes calcium and protein are packaged with B vitamins. So we start to see that nutrients are almost always delivered in packages, and so it becomes stressful to give ourselves our bodies that in the right packages. And so sometimes less supplements can be better off. And then on top of it, the fillers in these supplements these days are so inflammatory, unregulated. You have no idea what's going in your supplements. I don't care how expensive they are. I don't care what practitioner you bought them from, unless that person is someone that you trust truly and is going above and beyond to deliver for you. Because I'll be honest with you guys, it's very difficult to get an additive-free supplement and a truly pure supplement. And then the additives themselves can be problematic even if they're pure, because they can really inflame you. And so I try to just recommend ladies, hey, be very conservative with your supplements and try to get as much food supplements that you can, or supplements from food that you can. And in Fully Nourished, I will be actually there will be a whole chapter in your recipe book that is all about making your own supplements, DIY supplements, baby. And I'm going to show you how to make eggshell calcium and grass-fed liver capsules and marmalade, which should be used therapeutically. So there's going to be quite a few different, I'm going to show you how to make a liquid multivitamin for yourself out of herbs. So there's going to be a lot of recommendations. I'm also going to teach you how to make your own healing broth. So I think that bone broth is essential to healing, and it's so powerful and so full of nutrients that you need to heal, and those minerals that you're talking about. I implement a lot of OJ and orange based recipes, because oranges are very rich in potassium, ladies. So I keep all the things that I talk about with you guys in mind when I'm developing recipes, when I'm creating Fully Nourished. Like I am delivering this to you and making supplements optional. I will be going over supplements in Fully Nourished, but I'll be telling you that you need to use food as medicine first. And if you're not using food as medicine, you have no business taking any supplements. And then it is safe to take potassium, but I wouldn't go crazy with it. More is not better. It's about getting enough. And then iodine is not like I talked about before, I don't think it's great to supplement with. If you can help it, it's better to just get your iodine from multiple, servings of shellfish per week. What do you think about taking vitamin A every day? I don't think it's a great idea. I think you should get your vitamin A from grass-fed beef liver and high-quality dairy, and it comes a little bit in, there's some in coconut oil, things like that. But I don't necessarily think that you should supplement with it, because like I said, you start to get these nutrients out of ratios with other nutrients, and you can actually cause toxicity, especially with the fat solubles, vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E, and vitamin K. So you got to be really careful with those. What could fluctuating muscle spasms and cramps be and burning? Could this be low in something? Could often pain in the uterus be endometriosis? Oh, and why did you recommend aspirin and not NSAIDs? So fluctuating muscle spasms can be low certain minerals, like usually magnesium, calcium, sodium, and potassium. But that doesn't mean go supplement with those things. Go eat those things. And then pain in the uterus can be endometriosis, so you do want to make sure that there's nothing there. It is responsible to get that checked out by a doctor. And then why did I recommend aspirin and not NSAIDs? Well, aspirin is a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug, but it's just acetylsalicylic acid, and that's a natural compound. And it's very, I guess it's very gentle on the system as long as you take it with food. Just make sure it doesn't have a lot of fillers and additives. I regularly will use it if I have, period cramps. I like to have it on hand if I get a headache. I also like to have it on hand for if I get a breakout. I'll make a little paste out of it and put it on a zit. It's very anti-inflammatory. And then I also sometimes will grind it up and put it in like my face serums, or I'll actually apply it to my scalp for new hair growth as well because it's very anti-inflammatory. So I like having aspirin, and it's very cheap and easy to find. And it's not as harsh on the liver as Tylenol, Aleve, Advil is. So it can actually be helpful for the liver. Yeah, the aspirin can actually be beneficial for the liver. So I just like it because it almost has some therapeutic benefits to it. Whereas like the COX inhibitors, like the newer NSAIDs, Advil, Aleve, and Tylenol, they used to be actually, they used to not be available over the counter. They used to be prescription drugs. And then once they became over the counter, they were very expensive, right? And so they had to demonize aspirin because aspirin was too cheap. And so they wanted people to buy these Advil, Aleve, and Tylenol. And so they kind of did these like manufactured studies to show that aspirin was not safe for babies and aspirin was not safe for this. And so people kind of got scared away from aspirin. And they even fed rats like, I want to say like 8 grams of aspirin, which is like so much aspirin to give them ulcers. And then they were able to say like aspirin causes ulcers. Whereas like no one's ever going to take like 50 aspirin in a sitting, so it's just like one of those things where you kind of have to read between the lines. But I like aspirin. It's pretty anti-inflammatory and it's way better choice than popping an Advil or something like that. What do you think of enemas and how frequent? I don't think you should get addicted to high volume enemas. Once you get addicted to high volume enemas, it's very difficult to get off of enemas. So it's okay to use them if you're constipated or you're going through a healing protocol and you need to make sure you're pooping. Try to use as low volume as possible. But they can be very healing. Coffee enemas can be healing. Different infusions can be healing, so they can be a great idea, but you don't want to do them so consistently that you become addicted to them or you become reliant upon them to go to the bathroom, because it can happen. I've been following all of your recommendations on liver care and my acne has become much better, but I still get some breakouts on my jawline. My testosterone is high and my estrogen is low. Any suggestions? Yeah, so remember that acne is definitely a healing journey. It's not like something that just heals. A lot of people think that acne is a direct sign that something is bad, and sometimes breakouts can actually be a direct sign that things are changing and good. So make sure you're paying attention to how your breakouts are changing. I know a lot of people say like they're getting better, but I'm like, are they changing? Are they becoming more surface? Are they coming to the surface? Does it seem like they're drawing out of the skin? Because sometimes the infections can be so deep within the skin that as the body begins to heal, you'll start to see the breakouts become more and more surface. And as that happens, that's showing you that the body is healing from deep within. Because remember, skin is the last thing to heal, and so you heal from the inside out. And so it makes sense that you heal from the bottom up. And so you want to make sure that when your acne is changing, you're paying attention to how it's changing, because it can be telling you something. And then, if your estrogen is low and your testosterone is high, for like cystic acne on the jawline, sometimes castor oil packs can be helpful if they're cystic. If they're just kind of weird breakouts, sometimes honey or turmeric applied can be helpful. And just hang in there. Like I said, aspirin paste can be helpful for active breakouts. And hang in there. Like if you're seeing your acne improve, in the course of like a month or two, think about how much more it will improve in 4 months or 6 months. Like you have to really stick with it. And this stuff does take time, unfortunately. And I know you're the one struggling or suffering, but at the same time, it's like, okay, hang in there. Things are moving in the right direction, and so they will continue to move in the right direction if you keep doing what you're doing. Don't stop. What health issues did you have that brought you to do this? Did you mostly heal yourself? Yeah, like I guess I haven't shared my story in here very often, but I was very sick. I was bedridden. I had 3 autoimmune diseases. Well, I had over 15 different medical diagnoses, but like my main ones were PCOS, prediabetes, and then 3 autoimmune diseases. I was diagnosed with lupus, Hashimoto's, and celiac disease. But it was like this mystery illness because like I felt like people just slapped a diagnosis on me because they kind of like were like, well, we don't really know what to do with this. But like I was bedridden, I had chunks of hair falling out. I had like a severe case of post-birth control syndrome, you guys. Like it happened like a year after I went off of birth control. It's like everything started getting worse so quickly, and it was like I was a whole different person. I got to a point where like I was so chronically constipated. I had rashes all over my body. I had severe acne on my face and my back. I was 40 pounds heavier than I'd ever been, and I just gained it all in 6 months. I had horrible digestive issues like IBS type symptoms, severe bloating, severe like anxiety, panic attacks, that kind of thing. Like I just didn't feel like myself. I hate calling it anxiety because it was just more just like I don't feel good. Like I just feel not like myself. My personality was just not normal. And then I was tired. Like I had to sleep almost all day long. Like it was just awful. And so coming from that, I was told for almost 2 years that like nothing was wrong with me. Like they would run tests and they were like, everything is normal. And I'm like, nothing is normal. Like I literally have to lay in bed almost all day long. Like I can barely go up and down the stairs. I was so weak. And then I kind of decided to take my health into my own hands because I realized at one point that nobody was going to help me. And so that's when I started to really dissect health. But during that whole time, I was struggling with an eating disorder. I was struggling with bulimia. It was exercise bulimia. So like I had a very hard time eating more calories than I would burn. I was really trying to lose weight. I was obsessed with weight loss. I was so awful to my body. I just hated myself because I was so overweight, and I'd always been pretty lean and athletic. And so it's kind of this culmination of this really bad state of mental health, but then also a really bad state of physical health. And so I had to like slowly crawl my way out of that. And I did so in the form of like I started to change my diet, went gluten-free. Then I went paleo, and things kind of got better, but then some things kind of got worse. And then I started going keto, and some things got better and some things got worse. And it was kind of like this thing where I was taking 5 steps forward, 3 steps back, 5 steps forward, 3 steps back. And then, over time, I've started to really like learn more as I like got my certifications over time. And then I like began to do a lot of my own research. I mean, I've always done my own research. I've probably spent like thousands and thousands of hours on just health research, but now like I know so much about the body and hormones that like anytime I read a piece of research, it's just like it pulls a lot of things together for me here, or it'll pull a lot of things together for me here. And so yeah, I mean, I was very, very sick, which is what got me so passionate about this. Like I understand what it means to suffer. I know what it feels like to like ask like what am I even here for? Like, if I can't even, like, wake up and face my day, like, what is the point? And I was there for years. And then, once I found that a functional medicine doctor, she finally gave me a diagnosis. But again, I learned that doctors very rarely, even if they're functionally minded, they can only get you so far, and then comes you. And nutrition is where it's at, and not enough people place emphasis enough on nutrition, actually getting nutrients from your food. It's one thing to go gluten-free or dairy-free or whatever, but to focus on the things that you actually are restricting over the things you should be getting is ridiculous. And so that's kind of what got me here. I never heard someone talk about nutrition in the way that I thought needed to be talked about, and so I was like, well, it's something I gotta do. I recently started drinking grass-fed organic milk, but I get smelly gas. Does this mean I'm not digesting it well? Sometimes get discomfort in abdomen, but not often. Sometimes it can be because of the bacteria. Some people don't do well unless it's ultra pasteurized for a while. Some other times, remember that like milk is, has a lot of lactobacillus and bifidobacterium, and so it is going to go in and cause some die-off. Like it's going to go in and kind of really disrupt the balance of the gut and kill a lot of bad pathogens. And so you can get some die-off at first. You can get some like smelly gas or some like gurgling, but sometimes if you stick with it for a couple weeks, you find that goes away as you get to be able to tolerate it more and more. But it usually takes a little bit of time. But if it doesn't go away, then you don't feel your best, then that's a whole different story, and you might not tolerate it well. Optimal pulse is 70 to 90 at all times. Does it vary? Yeah, no. I mean, if you're above 95 or 90, then you're in a stressful state almost at all times. And then if you're below 70, sometimes athletes will be a little bit lower, but if you're like consistently just low, that's a pretty suppressed metabolism in my opinion. Best product to test my pulse. Also, when should I test? I'll actually get it. So Instagram's cutting me off. I have 20 seconds left, so I'm just gonna end this and restart my live. I'll grab my oximeter right now to show you what one I use. But yeah, if I didn't get to your guys' questions, please just ask them again. I'm gonna go live for another hour. See you in a second.